Wonderful. Well, hello everyone. Thanks so much for joining here today. I'm Henry Shevlin. I'm the Associate Director of the Leverhulme Centre for the Future of Intelligence. And it's my great pleasure to be hosting you here today in connection with Noēsis Collaborative and Human Connections to discuss a topic that I think is incredibly important that I've been working on now for sort of 3 or 4 years from an academic perspective. So just by way of further introduction, so I'm a philosopher of cognitive science and AI ethicist. A lot of my work is on understanding the cognitive and psychological capabilities of emerging AI systems. But I've also, over the last few years, become increasingly fascinated by how humans relate to AI systems. And I think this is absolutely central to what we'll be discussing today, with a focus on how young people relate to and are affected by AI systems. Just a little bit about the centre I represent here at Cambridge. So we are the Leverhulme Centre for the Future of Intelligence, a highly interdisciplinary research centre. I've got some good colleagues in the room who you'll meet today, I'm sure, if you haven't already met them. Our research is dedicated to getting AI right and ensuring that it's a net positive force, and rather than a destructive one, and mitigating as many of the harms as we can and harnessing opportunities. So we explore a wide range of topics from a bunch of different disciplines, everything from sociology, human-computer interaction, comparative literature, to machine learning, psychology, philosophy of cognitive science. And we're partnered with many of the universities and institutions below. And it's great to explore new partnerships like the one we're exploring today with Noēsis and Human Connections. Just a quick little, very brief primer. So in communicating sort of risks of AI companions to people, I've been told that the best way to communicate to young people in particular is in the form of short form video. So here is just a quick video I put together, very fast, trying to give a sense of just what a crazy 10 years we've been through. So this is actually 12 years. And I take as my starting point, actually, the release of the movie Her, by Spike Jonze. I think this was a really fascinating movie back in 2013. Scarlett Johansson playing the AI assistant, and Joaquin Phoenix as the clueless user who falls in love with her. And I really think back in 2013, this was total science fiction, right? Sure, we'd had cases, well, I'm sure we'll hear many times today about Eliza, Joe Weizenbaum's chatbot back in the 1960s that sort of people thought was human or enjoyed talking to. But back in 2013, before transformer models, before we had large language models, before we had ChatGPT, let alone the current crop of social AI products, the idea of a language assistant you could talk to fluidly about anything you wanted and have these deep, immersive conversations, that was total science fiction. And I don't think it even seemed like a particularly plausible direction that AI was going in. Instead, we had great progress being made in things like driverless cars or AI for medical research. But this idea of a completely socially competent AI agent, that was pure sci-fi. So things turned out to actually line up quite well, though, with Spike Jonze's vision. So here's just a quick snapshot video trying to condense some of the biggest headlines in news in the last 12 years. Let's see if this works. So, as I say, that's just a quick video I put together to reach the youth. But hopefully it also gives you a sense of the kind of, I think, quite appropriate vertigo that I think we should all be feeling in light of just how quickly these capabilities have emerged and how quickly they're affecting many levels of society, but particularly, as we'll be focusing on today, young people. So at this point, it's my great pleasure to pass over to Ron Ivey, CEO and founder of Noēsis Collaborative, and a research fellow with the Harvard Human Flourishing Program, and my great collaborator together with Jan Tucker, who you'll hear from shortly, in putting this event together. So over to you, Ron.
Great. Thank you, Andre. Thank you. Well, it's been a total delight to partner with Henry. And one of the cool things that, this partnership has come from is collaborations with some of you in this room. So this started, this conversation for me, I'll give it a little bit of background, but we had a salon last year in San Francisco where we brought together leaders from the tech industry and then those of us that were working on the social connection space to try to understand this phenomenon, because we were all kind of, having vertigo, trying to understand what was happening, how quickly it was happening. And the idea was to get a group together. There was already starting to be a kind of dynamic in the public. I was part of this, I'll talk about this, but a confrontational dynamic between these different sides. And that's important, and we need to continue that. But there are different ways of knowing and understanding this reality, both from the tech side when you're building it, from the people that are researching the impact, people that are working on policy. So we actually brought these folks together. There was a bit of an experiment. Can these people have a conversation together? And we got to the day where I'm thinking, is this going to be a total disaster? Getting these very diverse types of people and backgrounds together. But we were looking at the question, how might we design AI systems for social connection and human flourishing? And we were looking at it from multiple philosophical and scientific perspectives. And we were looking at the real practical product design angle, business model. I mean, that's a big part of this in terms of whether it's an engagement model or a subscription model, measurement, et cetera. But something beautiful happened in that day. I think there was a real insight that came across these different perspectives. And it really sparked a set of collaborations that have been, from my perspective, breakneck over the last year, but really exciting and very fruitful. Out of that, we realized that in conversations with one of our funders here, Midyar Network, that Harvard's an amazing place to do the research, but multi-stakeholder collaboration, it's not really set up for that. For my research work, I don't get evaluated on whether I'm having these kinds of conversations. It's, whether I punch out papers with Ian and other colleagues, and if we do academic focused work. So we set up a Noēsis collaborative as a kind of bridge between these two worlds, between the AI systems world, which is really focused on the technology itself, the businesses, the business models. It was really grounded in engineering and hard sciences. So we have some of the leading thinkers from that world here today. And then bridging it with other individuals and professionals that are working on human flourishing. We'll talk more about what human flourishing is. We'll unpack that so that it's not a buzzword, because it can be a buzzword sometimes. But it's more about the aspirational visions of our lives, the goals that we have. Is the technology helping us achieve that? Or is it sending us in a direction of languishing, depression, anxiety, addiction, etc.? And that has at its base, humanities are an amazing resource. Ian's here from the humanities department at Harvard. We've got human sciences. We've got cognitive scientists here, Julianne, etc. Faith traditions, wisdom traditions. There's been an incredible network that's formed over the last year that Brad and some other folks have been a part of, that Buddhists, secular humanists, Jewish, Christian, you name it, I've been on calls together that I've been working through these kind of deeper questions about what does it mean to be human, that science can give great insight, but these wisdom traditions are an incredible resource and perspective. Oh, and three important things that we noticed as we were doing this work. One, it's really important to do this kind of conversation, and we'll talk more about how we're doing this conversation, facilitate collaboration between meetings, and a big issue is systemic funding. So this is a very new field. It's very fragmented, and part of what we're looking at is how do we fundraise for the whole field? And we won't get into detail on that, but that's something we're working on in our work. How did we get here? How did we get to that meeting at humanconnections.ai? So Ian and I were planning a big conference on social connection at Harvard. We were bringing together probably 700 folks from across the United States to look at this question of why are we getting lonelier? why are we getting more socially isolated? And we were looking at it from an economic perspective. Is it being driven by some of these economic trends of inequality, the breakdown of community, the loss of kind of our civic ties? We had the whole system there. 2 weeks before that event, Roelof Botha, who's the managing director of Sequoia, a venture capital firm, said, hey, we're going to solve this loneliness crisis that Julian and others have really framed and given us insight on. We're going to solve it with an AI mentor, and it's going to address these needs. I am a very neutral, vanilla Twitter, social media person. Do not go to my Twitter to get really interesting, exciting stuff. I know my comments people would not agree with that, but there are other people in this room that are better at that. But in this case, I was pretty intense with Roelof and said, no, this is dystopian. This is replacing a fundamental relationship. Led to an encounter with his investee, the former CEO of Tinder, which is interesting that they were taking on this job. And Renata Nyborg, who's the former CEO, we ended up having a series of conversations about what are the implications of a human being interacting with a chatbot. Ian's work at the medical school, we know that highly isolated people have difficulty with truth and understanding reality. And then you introduce a chatbot into that relationship. The warning to Renata and others at that time period in 2023 was like, we're going to see some behavior with these human beings that may be delusional, they might be having a difficult time with reality. Renata said, these are great conversations. They were the 3-hour conversations in Paris, talking through these. Why don't we have a bigger conversation? Why don't we get this group together? And that's what's led to the humanconnections.ai. And from that, we gathered a series of ideas from some of you in the room that participated in that event that fit into 5 different categories. So how do you actually design the systems themselves, the actual chatbots in this case? How do you design the AI business in terms of the business model, the culture of the business, the personnel? Well, how does that impact this issue? For markets, what are investors doing? We've got some investors in the room. How are they thinking about this? Is this a risk profile that's going to show up in their analysis of their investments? For consumers, how do they navigate what's a good product for them to use? Political systems, which we're doing today, we're focused on today, and then cultural and social systems. Like I said, we've been dealing with faith-based institutions, civil society. They're really just, this is a total surprise. It's totally, it's a new thing. How do they navigate how to help their communities decide and make good choices? But the political system, at the beginning of this year, I did not think there was going to be a viable path for having a constructive policy conversation in my home country. We won't go into that in terms of the politics, but I've been very surprised in the last 4 months. Intense demand from policymakers. We're going to hear from Brad and some other folks that are working on that topic. They're getting a lot of questions about how do we oversee this? How do we govern this? Totally new phenomenon. That's the purpose of this meeting, is to answer that demand and have content that can be brought to those individuals. Sam Heiner, who we'll talk about later, introduced shortly, is working on these questions and has really gone deep on the actual policy itself. And then in terms of the broader objectives of what we're working on, we're building a global coalition of organizations around this topic of AI and human connection. We're holding events in different areas like here in UK. We're working with a subset of you and then a larger network on actual tools for the private sector, because there's demand on that side as well. And Ravi will touch on that later today, and some of our friends from IEEE. But that also informs the policy as well. And then last, what we're doing today is educate and inform the policy debate in the US and these international governance bodies. After this event, we saw quite a bit of, in the actual event. One of the key things that happened was this is Sherry Turkle. Do you guys know who Sherry Turkle is? MIT professor, sociology, I think, has been studying this issue before anyone thought it was an issue, and really is one of the respected voices. And this is Eugenia Cayuta, who in Henry's video, you saw replica being profiled a few times. It's one of the more popular applications. In their conversation between the two of them, which again, the night before, I thought, okay, how the hell is this going to go? This is going to be interesting. Like, this is going to be a weird dynamic between these two, because this person is very critical of AI companions, and this one's spent their career building them. What they aligned on in that meeting was the greatest risk or concern is for kids, for youth. I mean, there's a lot of different opinions on this question, but these two people agreed that kids should not be touching AI companions. And in that moment, and I saw the room, okay, this is where we need to focus. This is our attention needs to be put here. This started last year. So, and then after that event, we started to see all these things in the news. So it's not to say that the human connections and AI, that framing, there are bigger issues for different age groups throughout the full life cycle. And we will continue to work on that. But we're feeling the most urgent risk is around kids, and we'll have some great speakers to talk us through how to think about those risks. So purpose and outcomes, why we're here today. So whereas last year was how do we design the products and the systems themselves, and we'll do another event on that topic in a few months. Today's topic in question is how do we design policies to advance youth well-being in the field of generative AI, including AI tutors, assistants, and companions. And Henry and I and others have been working through how do we scale and scope, the focus, but we're really talking about within AI systems, generative AI, and then within generative AI, the chatbots that can build an ongoing relationship. And we'll have much more detail on that from Henry and Alan and others. Okay. All right. For the Europeans in the room, what do you call this? What would you call this? Emmental, right? For the Americans in the room, what would you call this? Swiss cheese. Okay. So that's our first language barrier right there. This is what we sent you all last week. We sent you a read ahead. And we're going to have content in the room today that is Swiss cheese. I love Emmental. It's one of my favorites. I love Swiss cheese. Either way, I live in France, so I have to say both. The holes will partially be filled in today. Do not feel the pressure to be perfect by the end of the day. We will have a working group after this meeting. You don't have to join, but if you want to join, you can. We will meet in November. We will continue to fill in the holes. And then the next month, and the next month. And then somebody will invent a new technology 2 months from now, and we'll have a whole new piece of cheese we need to build, basically. So don't feel pressure that, oh God, we've got a lot of content. We got to fine tune all this, especially fellow academics in the room. We're gonna get through it. So the key outcomes this morning, we'll talk through risks and benefits, and we'll expand on what we put in the white paper, and we'll capture those, and that'll be in the read ahead, and that will be a base for the white paper. We'll talk through a design paradigm for generative AI and youth flourishing. This is something I really learned from Ravi, is like this kind of positive focus for the product design really helps organize the way we think. You can think about harms, which is really important, but you also need to think about what direction are we going with the product, policy, what various things we're doing. Ravi is going to introduce design principles that we've been working on together since that meeting. That was another collaboration that came out of the salon. And we've got great friends and partners from IEEE. We're going to build on all the great work that's already been done in this space from a design standards perspective. And then we've got some great experts on the policy side that are going to share what we're seeing in the DC world. We did have a great person here from the UK that got COVID yesterday. So those of you that have any kind of UK policy insights, please feel free to speak out. But I think we'll set up a time afterwards with Andy with the Molly Rose Foundation. If you guys know Molly Rose, is kind of right at the core of this topic. And then we'll launch the working group at the end of the day.